Now, our next book is an account of the 1982 murders committed by wealthy socialite Malcolm MacArthur that disturbed the country and almost brought down a government. This author made it his mission to meet the released killer who had never spoken about his crimes for over 40 years. What follows is a thrilling puzzle of moral dilemmas. The Dubray non-fiction book of the year is A Thread of Violence by Mark O'Connell.
There was a real sense of shock, almost paradox in people's minds that a man who spoke in this way, a very sort of posh guy with a tweed jacket and a dicky bow who looked like a young professor, could have committed such brutal crimes. He was arrested in the home of his friend Patrick Connolly, who was the Attorney General at the time, so the highest legal official in the country was harbouring the most wanted criminal. And this was something that was just genuinely shocking, really disturbing and bizarre. When I was in my late 20s and early 30s, I did a PhD in Trinity on the work of John Banville, the Irish novelist. And one of maybe his best known book is The Book of Evidence, which is a fictionalized version, loosely but sort of very recognizably fictionalized version of the MacArthur case. This was the time that MacArthur got out of prison. So, I would be thinking about this person, Freddie Montgomery, writing my own interpretations of the fiction, and I would leave the library and I would see MacArthur walking across the front square. One evening that autumn, I had just emerged from the gloom of the Berkeley Library into a warm October evening. I was drifting across the cobbled front square when I noticed, drifting toward me, a man whom I could not quite place, but whose face was immediately familiar to me. I remember thinking, oh God, that's Freddie Montgomery, as in kind of confusing the fiction for the reality of MacArthur. And that was, I still think of that as the kind of origin of my fascination into the subject of this book. Over the years, I would see him around the city, semi-frequently. There was a long period where I was trying to find him, but trying to sort of accidentally bump into him, which is a quite absurd thing to do. I don't know if you've ever tried it, but it's an interesting exercise because Dublin's a small city and you bump into people all the time. But I did find him on the street and kind of proposed what I was going to do, and I said I was going to write a book and I would like to speak to him about his childhood, about the crimes and so on. And it took him a while to come round to it, but he did. I suppose what I was looking for him was a quite straightforward thing, which was to say, I did these terrible things and I must acknowledge that they are part of who I am. He would say, at times quite bluntly, something like, yes, I committed murders, but that doesn't mean that I am a murderer. So he didn't want to be identified with his worst deeds. You can frame it in a way that it sounds bizarre to say I committed murders, but I'm not a murderer. But I think there's something serious in that. There is something true about the desire not to be defined by the worst thing you've ever done. It's very difficult to make that case if the worst thing you've ever done is to take two people's lives. There's something unfinished about the book that makes readers want to create their own conclusions. And the reaction from readers has been much more intense than anything I've encountered before with my own work. And I think that has to do with the book's open-endedness, the book's lack of a kind of a tight conclusion. I don't tell people what to think about this man and about our relationship because in certain ways I'm not sure what to think of it myself.
And Mark O'Connell joins us now. Welcome, Mark. It's not a spoiler to say that you don't find the answers that you're seeking from MacArthur, but are you at peace with that now?
Yeah, I'm at peace with it. I'm comfortable, or I've become comfortable through the process of writing the book with ambiguity. I think, ambiguity is kind of the topic of the book in a way. Not knowing what motivates a person, not knowing what is going on inside another person's mind.
You're worried in the book about the attention it might bring yet again on this man who has committed two horrific crimes. Yeah. Is that still a question given the success of the book and the attention it has received?
Part of why I wanted to write this book in the first place is that there's a certain kind of image of this man, of Malcolm MacArthur, as this sort of like almost an iconic figure with the bow tie and the sort of particular look and this sort of like aristocratic monster. And there's something about that that's very unsatisfying to me, this kind of caricature. So I wanted to get in there and kind of complicate it somewhat. And there's an element of humanizing a person who has been seen as a monster. And that's a tricky thing to do, but it's also, there's so much moral ambiguity in the book. And, you know, it was difficult, but it's also like a really interesting subject for me. It's good stuff for a writer, you know.
I think every writer wanted to do this book.
Yeah.
You found the keys, basically, to get in there.
I stumbled across the keys somehow, yeah.
Have you heard from Malcolm MacArthur in terms of the reception of this book and having read this book?
We've spoken a little bit since it came out. You know, he's read the book. He wasn't entirely happy with it. He had some problems with some of the way that I approached him, and it was a difficult relationship in a lot of ways. It was a very tense relationship. You know, I wanted something from him that he wasn't always able or willing to give. He wanted something from me, and there was a lot of, like, there was kind of a constantly shifting power dynamic with lots of tension points.
It's a fascinating book, and you've done a great job on it, as is the reason you're here. And so I wish you the best of luck tonight. This man has been through it, ladies and gentlemen. So Mark O'Connell, put your hands together. Good luck.